welcome to the Purpose Over Profit podcast with Darren and Chris, where each week we discuss what it takes to live a life of purpose and profit and explore the lives of people trying to achieve just that.
And welcome back everyone to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week is slightly different. We're going to be focusing on something Darren wants to talk about, which is fantastic, around finding your purpose, which is obviously very relevant just now. How are you, Darren?
Yeah, I'm really well. So no guest this week, just us. And it's been something we've been trying to speak about for a while, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got a few of these in the pipeline actually, where it's kind of initiatives or topics that are close to our heart that we think actually could help people out there as well. And it's good to kind of mix it up as well to give people an idea of what we do as well.
Yeah, and obviously the whole topic or the title of the podcast is Purpose Over Profit. So purpose is something that we're both obviously passionate about, but yeah, it kind of comes up with almost every conversation I have with coaching clients. So hence why I thought, let's do a podcast episode on it. Like, what I mean by it, how can we go about finding your purpose, and yeah, like what are the steps that you can start taking to get there?
100%, it's true. Like, even in your personal life, purpose plays a crucial role, but even in business as well. And I talk about that with clients as well. We talk about the brand. What's the purpose of your business beyond making money? Because if you're just solely focused on making money, then eventually you're just going to wither away and die, because you're not going to be happy. You can have all the material things in life, but you're not going to be happy at all. So I think it's very relevant to look at it from your personal point of view, because you also need to have a purpose in life. I think I'm looking forward to this as well, Darren. So Darren, finding your purpose, where do we begin?
Where do we start? So I think the main thing that I would say to start with, like, well, why do you need to find your purpose? You know, you've alluded to it a bit there around, like, you could have all the money in the world, but ultimately you could be dying lonely, unfulfilled, full of regrets. So I think, personally, I think it's our own duty, right? Nobody's given a choice as to where you start in the world. But I think there is a massive responsibility we've got with what we do with our life and where we are when we end our life. Yeah. So at that kind of deathbed moment, we want to be thinking back onto a life full of purpose, one that's been fulfilling, one with plenty of love and joy and passion and, contribution. So I think there's an automatic almost sense of duty that I would think that we've got to get there. Now, I love this Japanese concept of Ikagai, which, Chris, I don't know if you've heard of.
Yeah, I've heard of it. It might actually be through yourself. I've heard of it actually, but if you can remind me and the listeners, please, that'd be fantastic.
So it's about trying to merge all of the things together that you love. I don't know if you're aware of a Venn diagram. I talk about Venn diagrams as a statistician, like everyone will know what they mean, but imagine lots of circles overlapping each other. Yeah, so one of those circles is what you love. One of those things is what people need. One of those things are what you can be paid for. And one of the things is what you're good at. Now, we'll all be contributing to some way, shape, or form to one of those circles at the moment, probably at least one or two. But Ikagai, I guess, is about trying to combine all of those four circles to almost meet in the middle at some point, which is called Ikagai, which is a reason for being, where you've got a real reason for being, providing a sense of fulfillment, either to someone or to an organization, fulfilling some sense of fulfillment with what you do. So what you love, what people need, what you can be paid for, what you're good at, combining all of those things together. Now, if I think back to my corporate job, I was doing what I was getting paid for, and I was doing what I was relatively good at. Worked a lot with numbers, building strategies, forecasting where we might be in the next few years. So I was doing those things. There was also an element of what people needed. Well, there's a business that was willing to pay for something. So generally those things go together. But what did I love? I was probably missing a couple of crucial components, which for what you love, you've got a passion, and generally you've got a passion and a mission for you. And I was probably missing a lot of that. So yes, I was getting paid. Yes, I worked hard at it and I was relatively competent and good at it, but I was kind of really missing that passion. I don't think, looking back now, being a year out of work, was I just a number? Was I instantly replaceable? Yeah, probably. So therefore, why would I be there when someone else could fill that void quite easily? And I think there's an element of each of us trying to find that passion or mission in our lives that only we can do. Only we could be in that place. I think someone would be really difficult to step into my shoes as a coach, purely because I've got a specific, unique way of working with my clients and a way of seeing the world that I like to instill in my clients and about moving forward. But that's because I've got passion and I've got a mission there about what I'm trying to do. So that's really why I would say you need to find your purpose. And then I would say,
what was going to jump in there, Dan? I think that's fantastic when you think about how you're breaking that down, because passion is such an important aspect of life. If you don't have passion for anything, you're not going to give it your all. You're not going to be fulfilled. So there's a great movie which is called Soul, a Disney movie. Don't know if you've seen it.
Love it. Yeah, listen, I'm always one, like, Jill always looks at me when these movies come on. She knows when it gets an emotional bit. She looks across at me to see if I'm going to be in a bubbling mess or not. That's it. I think I just held it together. I've watched Soul a few times now, but yeah.
I'm a total tearjerker. I love the Disney movies. They pick you up, drop you, and pick you back up again. But in Soul, there's a great bit, as you know, where it talks about when you're in that moment, and you're in that moment where you're loving your life, you've got that passion, and you get lost completely in what you're doing, and you can lose time, you can lose sleep, you can even lose hunger issues as well, because you're so engrossed in that moment. And that's where you talk about passion. So if you love what you're doing and you're in a job what you're doing which you love, then you keep doing it forever, and that's that passion. And that's what I think of passion being, and purpose is to me as well.
Yeah. And as I say, it can feel very difficult to do, and it can feel quite scary to do. But when you look at things over a long enough outcome, nothing's really that scary. Like, I always like to ask myself and my clients, like, and Joe, we talk about this. Is this something that's going to bother you in 10 years' time? Is this something that's going to bother you even in 5 years' time? If the answer to that is no, it allows you to be able to create that distance, that physical sort of separation from whatever it is you're facing. And there's a lot of that when you think about, if I quit my job to go and do that, I won't have any money. But where will you be in 5 years if you just stayed with your same job? Yeah, you will find money. You will, yes, it will be difficult through a period, but by the end of 5 years or 10 years, you'll be really glad most of the time if you've been led by your passion or a mission that you have. So yeah, I think it's absolutely, it's absolutely massive to be able to find what that is and start to move towards it.
So we've covered those 4 components. The first one was what you do. Is that right?
Yes. So doing something what you love. Yeah. So being able to do something that you love, doing something what people need, you can be paid for, and what you're good at. So generally, most people will be getting paid for a job. They'll be doing something, but inherently, because you're getting paid for it, you're providing something that people need. But then what you're good at as well, some people might be coasting, they're not particularly great at it, but it pays the bills. So most people will get 2, some will get 3. As I said, I think I was probably in the camp where I had 3, but what you love is the one that's generally missing from those elements. So if you can try and combine all of those bits together, that's what the Japanese would call as a reason for being. That would be living a life which you have a mission, you're passionate about it, you've kind of merged that passion and profession. And yeah, you're on that path, you're living that every single day.
And how do you go about finding or discovering those aspects?
So I suppose there's multiple ways you can approach it. Personally, I look at 3 ways. So I think, like, you first need to understand yourself better. So who am I? Like at the deepest level. So it's a question which people go, what do you mean who I am? You ask someone like, oh, who are you? What do you do? That's kind of as deep as we get when we speak to people out in the world. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm Darren. What would have been? I'm a retention manager. Oh, okay, what does that mean? Is that who I am? Or I'm a dad, or I'm a father of 2 kids, or a husband. There's these labels that we put on it, but actually there's no depth to that. There's no depth to kind of who you are as a person. So when I talk about who am I, I'm looking at what are your values in life? Who are your role models, and why are they your role models? Who are the people that you look up to? How do you go about your life? How are you different to other people? What are your strengths? What are the things you're not so good at? Yeah, so understanding yourself at the deepest sort of level, understanding who you are. and then understanding where you're going. So you know where you are, then you need to figure out, well, where are you going? Everyone needs to have a direction, a North Star, a goal, an aim, objective. You need to know where it is you want to be going. Yeah. So if you can't understand who you are, how can you know where you're going? I always say, like, if you don't know what your values are, that's why you're struggling with, oh, I don't know what I want to do. You need to understand yourself better. Sometimes that might just be trying a whole load of shit that you don't really know whether you like or not, but it's building experience. So, if you're 15 years old and you're stressing out because you don't know what you want to do, this expectation of asking our kids to choose the degree that's going to define their career, that's absolute bullshit. Like, why would we put that pressure on our kids? I'm 39, going to be 40 next year. I'm still figuring this stuff out. And actually, your values, what you want in life, your skills, experience, all of that stuff will change. Where do you want to go as you move throughout your life? So I think there's a lot of this is cyclical in nature. That's why I've drawn a circle typically when I talk about this. But it's like, who am I? Where am I going? You're always going to be starting to go back around those things because they're always going to be changing. But yeah, where am I going is the main one, is the second one there. And then obviously once you know where you're going, inevitably it's like, okay, so how can I get there? Who can help me? Who has experience with the skills or knowledge that I want to be tapping into in order to help me get to where I need to be? What do I need to be doing? Who do I need to become in order to get where I want to go? So it might be, speaking in front of 10,000 people. Okay, so you want to be a public speaker. Okay, so maybe start speaking to 50 people. You need to speak to 50 people before you can go and speak to 10,000. Sure. Okay, so let's start with the first step. So that's the three areas that I would look at in terms of breaking it down. And I like the power of three. It's easy. People can remember that. So who am I? Where am I going? And how can I get there?
Again, really simple, really easy to understand as well. And I think for everyone listening out there, I mean, sometimes I do this in workshops as well with brand stuff where I'll say to businesses, I'll be like, what kind of businesses do you aspire to be like? What do you like? And then they sometimes struggle with that kind of concept. So I say to them, okay, well, let's, in the sessions, bring a celebrity to the table. What celebrity reflects your organisation? And then they'll bring somebody, so somebody might bring Gerard Butler because they're quite outgoing, they're courageous and all this kind of stuff. So I liked your piece when you said, who do you look up to or who do you aspire to be like as well? Because then you can pull those values from them as well. Because sometimes when people try to look deep within themselves, they struggle sometimes because I don't know if it's just the Scottishness in us, but sometimes you don't like to look deep. You like to kind of have this false projection of yourself, like, no, I'm fine. I'm a business analyst that works for this. That's it. That's the face of it. But you do need to dig deeper. And I think giving that kind of roadmap for people to say, let's understand who you are, where you're going to go, and this is how we're going to get you there as well. I think that's such an easy signposting for people to understand their head. I think that's a really easy way for people to understand it.
100%, mate. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is hard. Like this is the thing, right? You're saying people would rather not do that. That's because it's difficult. It's not easy to ask these questions of ourselves. So it's sometimes easier just to kind of look for some other reason as to, some secret or some bit of knowledge that someone could give us to help us identify our purpose. Well, actually, no, we need to look inside ourselves, and we need to ask ourselves those questions to help bring that out, to help us on the path to living a purposeful life, I guess.
Yeah, so obviously you've given us the kind of the 3 points there. So where do you go next?
So let's break them down. I'm going to go into each of those and just kind of say, so how could I better understand myself? So there's 3 points to this. So I've already touched on it already, but identifying your core personal values. So that's the first thing that you should be looking at. So you can do some simple things just to look at this. So how would you describe yourself? What are things like success? What does that look like to you? I actually have a values exercise. If you go to my website, which is workinprogresscoaching.co.uk, and if you go to free resources, there's a values exercise where you can download a PDF, which effectively takes you through this process. But it helps you to look into yourself, almost starts to tease out some of the attributes and characteristics, I guess, that are specific to you, and looks at like, well, what are those core personal values? Ultimately, by the end of that PDF, you should have a much better understanding as what are your core personal values. And a question that I always love to ask people is, what would you be doing if money was no longer like an issue for you? Yeah. So if you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing? And once you get past I'll be on the beach sipping margaritas, doing whatever, driving Lamborghinis, there's going to be an element of, well, no, what is your actual purpose in life? What is it, the things that bring you joy? And you'll find you'll navigate towards that. But you do need to need to spend some time understanding your values so that you can think about what you'd be doing if money was no longer an issue. So that's identifying your core personal values. And as I said, we'll put the link in the show notes as well. So you should have no excuse really to not be able to go and have a kind of step-by-step guide to understanding yourself better, identifying your core personal values. Another exercise, which I think is absolutely huge, is look at your key life roles. So the Wheel of Life is an exercise that I do with a lot of transformational or life coaching clients. But just, simply, if you draw a circle on a bit of paper, cut it into 8 segments, write down what are the roles that you play in life. So for me, I'm a husband, I'm a podcaster, I'm a dad, I'm a property investor, I'm a transformational life coach, I'm a personal coach to myself. So that I take myself to the gym, I read books to try and better my knowledge. So there are some typical key life roles for me, but what are the key life roles that you've got in your life? And then think about how you're currently showing up in those life roles. Yeah. How are you showing up and where would you like to be? Yeah. So if you imagine, once you've drawn that circle and you've looked at the roles that you play within those 8 segments, and again, if you've got 5 or 6 life roles there, then that's absolutely fine. You don't need to get to 8. But once you've got that, if you imagine the center of that circle is 0 and the edge of the circle is 10, just mark yourself, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you showing up in those roles right now? And then mark where you would like to be. So you might already be an 8 and a 9 in some of those life roles, or you might not. You might be, 1 or a 2. I was speaking to someone, new client last week, who was telling me they were a 1 or 2 in one area of their life. Yeah. And you're right. Okay. So where do you want to be? So it's not always necessarily that the lower you are means that's the area you need to be focusing on. You just might not care. I might be a 6 in an area or a 5 in an area, and I might just be okay with being a 5. I don't want to particularly grow that area. But if you look at where the biggest gap is between where you are now and where you want to be, there'll typically be a role that you want to focus on and actually significantly change, which will help you kind of focus on that and actually gain the benefit that you want. So say you're a 4 just now and you want to get to an 8 or a 9, you're going to need to put a significant amount of effort in that. Okay. So once you've understood how big that gap is, how would you be best showing up? Yeah. Thinking about the values that you've just got, how can you bring those values into those life roles? And sometimes you'll find that a lot of the things we find difficult in life, a lot of the things that you're struggling with, happen because we've got conflicting values. So people might be in a workplace where they feel like let's say belonging is a big value for you. Belonging is really huge for me. So if I didn't feel like I was particularly belonged somewhere, I'm going to feel quite unhappy in whatever role that is. Yeah. So I need to feel that. So often when we think about our life roles and why they're not right, think about how your values are showing up there. And it might not mean that you're performing poorly or you need to change something there. You might need a significant shift. You might need to change jobs, or you might need to change your partner that you're with, your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. And sometimes it's a significant shift. So if you can only make those judgments once you understand yourself better. So that's why I always say you understand yourself better, and then think about your life roles. Where are the areas that you're not performing as well? Are values playing that part? And how can you start to adapt those roles to bring in more of your values into the roles that are most important to you?
I think there's actually so much in there, Darren, when you're going through that as well, because even if you go back to the point where you're given the free resource tool to look at your own values as well, so that gives you a kind of position in your own life to understand what are close to you, your attributes as well. But then you're taking somebody else on a journey, which is the wheel of life. And I can imagine somebody who, you mentioned the clients are one or two, and they might be okay with that. But the word transformational comes in there. I'm guessing for people doing that own wheel of life, that's transformational for themselves, because it's quite an emotional piece. It's being honest with yourself. And that's quite raw for people, I guess, as well. They're looking at something, and one might be family's really important to me. But actually, you know what? I'm free because I'm out doing 9 to 5. I'm working long hours. I'm not bringing the money I want to. I'm not seeing my kids. So I'm actually probably a 2 at that. And emotionally, that can make somebody quite unstable. But then they get to see where they are and where they want to be. And I guess that's where that transformational piece comes in, that support and that help. And even thinking about 8 segments, people might struggle. And I'm glad you said 5 to 6 and you're doing well, because people might struggle with it. They might feel that they've got to just add in 8 for the sake of it. But the more you unpick it with people and actually spend time with them, they'll easily uncover those 8, I guess, as well. And I
Yeah,
guess
and it's not a goal seek as well. So it's not
yeah.
I think it's fine to have, if it's 4 roles or 5 roles or whatever. I mean, typically I would imagine most people will have at least 4, but I wouldn't goal seek to 8. Not at all. But you made me think when you were talking there around, like, when I became a dad, your values change throughout your life. So they're not fixed. It's not like you can just do this exercise once and then it's done. And then you're like, oh, someone asks you what your values are. Like, oh yeah, I know mine. They're, belonging, or they're fun, or they're success.
The money, traveling the world, being away from home, and you have kids, and
Yeah,
it's wait a minute, they need to be closer.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I was on a podcast earlier, and I was telling the guy, he was like, so why did you get into property? And it's a cliche, but I literally held my daughter, Lauren, in my arms for the first time in the hospital. And I felt this like instant connection and burden and responsibility on myself to say, who are you? How can you be the best role model you can for this little thing you've brought in the world? She's not asked to be brought in the world. Me and Joe brought her into the world. How can we possibly give her the best possible life? And I don't mean by handing everything on a plate, but how could we be the best role models for her? How could we help her most in her life? And it was a seismic shift, and that got us in that instantly was a shift in my values. But do you know what it also did? It added a life role in. Suddenly I hadn't been a dad before. Now I was a dad. So I find with life coaching clients is they'll come after some trauma or some transition within their life. Something new's happened. And if it's like becoming a parent, that's absolutely huge. You've just had you've got your wheel of life all sorted. You understand your values, and all of a sudden here comes a kid along, and you've got this new role that kind of knocks everything else out of kilter. So you need to go back around this all the time, I guess, is the message from it. And to expect that you can just pick up extra roles within your life, significant roles that is, and just think that's not going to have a knock-on impact to the other roles within your life, it's crazy. Like, everything that you focus on, everything that you do has an impact on everything you don't do. So yeah, I think we've covered life roles there.
Yeah, no, I think so. You mentioned about the circle as well, and going around that circle, and every stage in your life you'll reevaluate and look at it. So you might get retired or whatever else. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, so that's life roles. So what's next?
So what's this? So the last thing that I would say, a great exercise that I would say to go and have a look at to how you can better understand yourself, is go and speak to your friends and family. So there's this concept of Johari's window, which is it's a consultant concept. I've came across it in my corporate career, where if you imagine like a curtain, you're wanting to peel back that curtain a little bit more. Yeah. So there'll be some things you can't see, and there'll be some things other people can't see. And obviously you can understand yourself better, and you can do a lot of inner work and ask questions of yourself, but actually asking others how they see you can be really, really useful as well. And that can add to and complement your perspective of yourself. So it doesn't need to be terribly complicated. It was an old former director and mentor that taught me this, but she said, get your phone out, text your closest friends, say half a dozen people, friends or family, and say, ask them to describe me at my best and describe me at my worst. Just 3 words each. Yeah, so just text the people that are closest to you and ask them for 3 things to describe you at your best and 3 things to describe you at your worst.
Do you remember any of those words that came back from some of your friends that came back?
Do you know what? I don't. I mean, I'm gonna paraphrase probably, but it's an interesting point, because I think looking at to see if there's any patterns there is a really important point, because sometimes what you'll see is, this is my biggest lesson from this exercise was actually around how subjective language is. So someone will call me driven as a positive, like when I'm at my best, but someone else would call me overbearing.
Wow.
Okay, or obsessed. Now, I can't remember if that's exact words I've used, but it's a good, that definitely came up. And it's so interesting because it allows you to approach language with a certain level of lightness and hold criticism from others a bit lighter as well, because it's just language at the end of the day. So no 2 people will have the same meaning and context behind the words that they use. That's why I love talking about this sort of stuff. We had a linguist on a few episodes back, didn't we? But it's just great to kind of get into some of this stuff. But I think that is a great exercise to be able to get you to think about how you're perceived externally. So this is all about understanding yourself, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. And part of that is not only how you feel, how are you coming across to other people? Yeah, if you think you're this energetic, like life and soul of the party, and you get a bit of feedback saying like you're a bit too much, or you're a bran flake, you're so boring and struggle to like keep attention to you, you go, oh, that's really strange, but it gives you something to think about, to say, okay, that's just one perspective, so hold it lightly, but it allows you to be able to dig into that and kind of understand how you're coming across, which if you want to be successful, I think ultimately we're 8 billion people in the world. We do need to speak and interact and with each other as best as we possibly can. So I think it's important to make sure how we're coming across is how is being perceived that we come across. I forget the name of the title of the podcast that we did, Chris, but it was something very similar to that. It was like, are you saying what's being heard? Was that it?
Yes, no, that's right, the Eloise one, Eloise Leeson, yeah, definitely. And just listen to you as well. Again, it goes back to that vulnerability aspect. So even in the wheel of life, you're kind of opening up, you're kind of grading yourself, and going to friends and family, you're opening it up and you're saying, right, okay, what's working here and what's not working. Because again, if you can take that feedback on board and make it constructive and make it better for yourself, then you're going to have a better outcome as well. Because the world is, we know this ourselves in social media, how you're portrayed and how people see you, and no matter what you put out positive, there'll be somebody that will probably come back with a negative viewpoint, or it might rub against the wrong person as well. So you've got to have a thick layer of skin to a point and be confident enough that you can handle that. And by doing these kind of steps, I'm guessing that gives you that little bit of confidence, because then you're able to see that it is subjective. Language is very subjective as well, and it's how you take it on board and rationalise and departmentalise it as well that makes you go forward. So no, I think that's a great bit of feedback. It'd be really interesting to see what people, if they try that trick or that piece, to see what the feedback is as well of friends and family.
Do you know what? I think we'll drop it. I'll take a note and I'll drop it in the Facebook group as well, and we'll see Purpose to Progress. We'll see what the guys make of it there, because I think it's a great exercise. It actually made me think that it almost focuses your mind on deeper conversations, rather than, once you start on this stuff, rather than small talk. I get really bored with small talk, like how's the weather, how's things, oh no, that's not really tiresome. Like, I think I had a couple of beers with the guys, well, mates, a few nights ago, and I was like, we were like kind of reminiscing about the past and thinking about any regrets, and what would you have done differently, and what you think in the next few years hold. And it's like waking up thinking we would have never had those types of conversations in our 20s. It's just absolutely crazy how things change, but you kind of you're more interested, and you get more you get more fulfillment out of different conversations, deeper conversations, I think, as you naturally get older.
Yeah, definitely. So let's bring this back then. So that's the segments, life roles, feedback.
So that's it.
Yeah.
That, to summarize, so I guess in terms of how you can better understand yourself. So you do a lot worse. You can go and look online actually, to look for personal values. There's lots out there. Like, how do I identify my core personal values? Go and Google it. You'll probably find something. I have my own template that I take people through, and I work with these exercises on my clients. So go to my website, workinprogresscoaching.co.uk, download a PDF and crack on with that. Have a look at your key life roles. So draw your wheel of life, carve up into what are the key roles that you play across the working week, across the weekend. Who are you? How you establish how you're showing up in those roles and where you want to be. And then speak to your friends and family as well. Get some external input into how you project yourself, and see what comes back. It will be, I'll guarantee you, none of your friends are going to be asked that question before, unless you had asked them specifically for an interview or something like that, preparation. But very few people, I'd imagine, would have been asked that. So if anything else, it creates a conversation.
It's interesting, even in our work premises, we've done it before, we get 360 feedback as well in our work piece. So I guess it's even a work setting as well. If you want to ask your peers or people that you're in charge of, it can be interesting as well. But obviously do it with the kind of HR policy in mind, that nobody comes back and calls you a complete tool. I won't go down to
that. Do you know why I like the phrasing of that question? Is because I'm a little bit skeptical with some of the feedback process and work, but that's because we're nice people at heart. Most people don't want to piss someone else off or give someone undue criticism. So we're never completely honest. Let's be honest. I've never been completely honest with feedback unless I've been managing the individual. There's always been kind of conflicted reasons for that. So, which we don't need to necessarily go into just now, but I love the polar opposites. Like, tell me when I'm at my absolute best. Tell me when I'm at my worst. Wow. Yeah. There's no, you're kind of okay. I really like this. So one of the feedback techniques in work is stop, start, continue, isn't it? So I'd like you to stop doing this. What would you start doing? And I love, what would you like to continue doing? Well, just keep doing what you're doing because you're really fantastic. And that's not helpful, and it doesn't help you grow. Whereas I love that dealing with extremes, because you can do more with those in terms of a self-awareness piece. That's the ultimate aim of the exercise.
Fantastic. Excellent. So what's next on this fulfilling journey?
Number 2, where am I going? So hopefully by going through that process, understanding yourself, you'll understand the things that you will be looking for in opportunities that face you. Yeah. So understanding where you're going, there'll be where you are just now and where you want to be. So we've just done it. If you've been through those 3 things that I touched on in the last section, you'll have done your wheel of life. You've said where you are in each of those roles and where you are and where you want to be. Now, it might be one of those roles is where you want to create the change within your life. So if you focus in on, I would focus in on 1 or potentially 2 of those roles in your life. I wouldn't try and make transformational change across everything. I'd ideally focus just on one area, and that's where you can focus all your energy, or as much energy you possibly can, and that's going to create that shift. If you dilute yourself and try and spread yourself across, say, 8 different roles, that's going to be really difficult to create that change. You're going to be able to nudge each forward an inch maybe, but not significantly. So if you focus in on that one area, generally there's 2 things here, and I always describe it like a tug of war. So imagine people holding a tug of war. There's your current self, and then there's your future self, and you're both pulling at this bit of rope. Now, your present self has got a set of limiting beliefs that they're holding on to with a tight grasp. And then you've got this future self that's saying, oh, no, but I want to get to this point. That will make me happy. You often hear people thinking, when I get, X amount of income per month, I'll be happy. Or if only when the kids leave the house, or when the kids go to school, I'll be, everything will be cool. The reality is you've always got these different visions that are, your future self and your present self that are competing against each other. And your present self is generally a lot stronger than your future self. The reason being is that all of the limiting beliefs that we have, all the fear, all the experiences that we've gone through when we've been told we're not good enough, all the things that have brought us down in life, they trigger us emotionally, and we can bring that emotion back in a heartbeat. Yeah. And our brain never forgets that stuff. So we're holding on really tightly to that. Whereas the future vision, we don't generally have a natural, we don't have a natural kind of strong hold on it. We have to create it. We have to try and somehow get the level of emotion to greater than where the impact is of the limiting beliefs. So this section around where am I going, I want to touch on the limiting beliefs. I want to touch on your vision of the future. Again, we could talk about this for hours, but they're the elements that I think I want to talk to here. So imagine it like a tug of war, and you want to loosen the grip on your limiting beliefs, and we want to be tightening the grip on our vision of the future. So some questions to think about your limiting beliefs. So think about, why are you not where you intend to be or where you want to be for that chosen role? So how are you holding yourself back? How has it transpired that you're not already at whatever an 8 or a 9 or a 10 is within that role? Yeah. How are you not already there? What's holding you back? Yeah. And then think about, what are the consequences of holding yourself back? So a lot of people say, oh, I want to be a millionaire. Okay. Or I want to speak in front of 10,000 people. Okay, go and do it. Yeah, and it's, oh, I've got to pay the bills, and I've got to just, I've got to keep the lights on, or I've got a family and I'm not smart enough. I need to go back to get a qualification. There's usually something underneath that, yeah, or that's stopping that. So it's like a fear of failure. What about if I realize I'm not good enough? Yes, it's easy to keep the perception. Like, how many people, Chris, I don't know if you subscribe to this as well, I still talk about it. I could have been a professional footballer, but I just didn't work out for me at the time, but I could have done it. It's easier to be able to kid ourselves that we could have made it, and that just it was circumstances that transpired against us, rather than going and proving and doing, leaving nothing on the table to go and see if I could achieve what I want. And then seeing if it happens or not. The problem with committing 100% to something is, if you do that, you cannot give any excuses that you didn't try. Yeah. And if you fail, that's going to be difficult. You think of these athletes that, train to run the 100 meters or whatever and finish in 4th place, so don't make the podium, or finish second, never quite getting that gold. Yeah. They've left everything on the table. They haven't quite got to where they ideally wanted to be. But they've left absolutely no excuses. They've got no excuses of themselves. They've just not been good enough. And that's a harsh thing for people to feel. We don't want to feel that we're not good enough. We don't want to feel that we're not quite as good as that other person, or not quite as successful as that other person. So I think thinking about what the consequences of holding yourself back are like just recognizing what's driving that. What are the reasons that you're not where you want to be already?
And just to pick up on some of those points, actually, because the big word I hear, don't know if you mentioned it or just hear it subconsciously, is the word commitment. It's that commitment. So you talked about the athletes. The Olympics is on just now. The stories coming out that some the Olympic athletes are taking a pause for their mental health as well, even cricketers as well, saying that over the last 7 years they've maybe had 2 or 3 week break because they've been training so hard, even through COVID, pushing themselves as well. And that, you're right about that shock of pushing yourself to a point where you don't even get the medal or whatever else, and that must be really hard for them. But again, they've left everything on the table, as you said. So you're not blaming yourself. You're blaming your past self by saying it never wasn't good for me. I couldn't become a footballer because X, Y, and Z. It wasn't right at the time. I had to go and get a job and do this. So there's no way you can put the blame on somebody else. And I like this concept. I like the visual concept. You keep on bringing it back. Everything's visual. It's a tug of war. It's a signpost. It's all visual. It's all about do one thing at a time and do it well, do it right, and then break it down. Look at, well, what are the things that I've not been able to do, and then figure out what you could do to get to that point. We're not at that yet, but that tug of war analogy is really strong as well, because it gives you that mental image in your head of what's going on in your own brain, that limiting belief, and it's trying to change that slowly. And I guess that must take time to change as well.
Absolutely. This sort of stuff is like a constant work in progress. So, once you've established what it is that might be holding you back, so it might be like I'm concerned it's not good enough. Yeah, so we've all maybe done a presentation or a report for someone at work, and we're like, oh, I'm not done with it yet. I need more time. I need more time. Actually, we don't. I find a lot of that time is we want to perfect something because we want it to be the best it can be, and we're fearful that it's not as good as it can be. And that if that's not as good as it can be, then it means I'm not that good. Yeah. So once we've identified what it is, what are we frightened of? It's not necessarily fear, but 9 times out of 10, I find fear is that's the thing that's stopping us moving forward. Yeah. Sometimes it's the fear of just being successful. Sometimes we talk about like, yeah, we want to be there. We want to be on that stage or want to create that success. But deep down, we're frightened that if we get there, the responsibility that might be on us.
We talked about this recently, yeah, sometimes the fear element comes in as well as when you're about to make another jump, either in your career or either in something you're doing and making the next stage. And that's when the fear comes in. That's the kind of imposter syndrome sometimes jumps in to say, are you sure you can do this? Are you ready to do this? But then that's your limiting beliefs coming in, and your future beliefs probably challenging that as well. And you fight that internal debate you're having. So yeah, 100%, Darren.
Yeah, it's my coach, wasn't it? We were chatting about it. I think it was like, oh, not done and done with it. Like I can't deal with it anymore. And I actually put it out on our newsletter, which I love just how transparent that is. And it was one of someone that she works with or someone in our team. I reminded her, you always get like this when you're at another level, like, you know, in order to kind of kick on into a new territory sort of thing. So yeah, like it's a great thing to not only be aware of it, but even when you don't have people around you that can call you on seeing that. But yeah, I guess once you've recognized the fear or what it is that's stopping you getting there, understanding it from both sides. So what's the consequences? Either how has that feeling stopped you in the past, and how has it helped you? So it's always going to have supported you, because it generally fear of doing something you've never done or a level of success is trying to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to feel failure. It doesn't want you to feel criticism from others. It doesn't want you to feel like you're not good enough. So remember, a slight segue. Our brains haven't evolved for millions of years, right? Well, they have evolved for millions of years, but they haven't evolved for at least thousands of years, right? Now, we're still hunting. We still have the emotional response to getting chased by, you know, back in caveman times. We're still get chased by, you know, could be a predator or another tribe or something like that. We've still got that same wiring in our brains. The problem is life has massively changed. You know, like if you go 20 years ago, we didn't even have mobile phones in the same way that we did. We did have mobile phones, but we didn't have smartphones. You go 30 years, no one was on the internet apart from like very, very few. There's just so much that's changed, but our brains are trying to catch up. So that kind of feeling of fear comes from, it's the same as if I'm not sure, there's maybe a predator out there. If I step outside there in dark, I can't quite see where I'm going. Your senses are telling you there might be danger. There's something that's going to harm you. So there will always be something that's there'll be a benefit from that. It's not just that it's holding you back, it's keeping you safe, or it's stopping you feeling hurt in some way. So
what I'd say to build on that, Darren, which is really interesting, talking about the caveman piece, is that fear piques our interest as well, which is quite interesting as well. So whenever we mentioned when you're going to go and do something new, there's an element of fear there because it gives you the cold sweats, your palms will be sweating, going to do public speaking, whatever else. But it's the same with you always look for something that's different as well. So your caveman days, you're walking about, going to try and get your food. There's a rustle in the bushes. You're drawn to whatever that rustle is because your attention's aware of what's going on there. And that's what we're drawn to, like as brands, as people, as individuals, you're drawn to that, something that's different. And that's what your fear's drawn to, something that's different. It's telling you alarm bells are something there, but at the same time, it's piquing your interest to say what's beyond those bushes, what's hiding behind there. It could be a caterpillar, it could be a dog, it could be just Tyrannosaurus Rex, it could be anything in there, but you always want to go and see what's beyond there. And that's what I love about this purpose element, about finding your purpose to push you beyond that fear element. So you go beyond and look beyond what's in the bush as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's why it feels conflicting, because we're like, oh, I know where I want to get to, but it's dangerous, or I'm not quite sure of myself, or it's going to be difficult. So I guess it's just understanding, and basically this element of if you imagine that rope, you want to loosen the grip on it. So you want to understand what that is. So what is the fear? Write it down. Write down, like, what is it that you're actually most frightened of? Yeah, in terms of what's holding you back in terms of getting to where you want to be. And then think about how it's serving you right now. So how is it keeping you safe? And then we want to almost put it on the stand. So imagine it like you're putting it on trial, and you want to say, right, is this true? Write this statement down that you think. So it's like, I don't want to feel like I'm not good enough, or there's already, let's say a business one, for example. So starting a new business, it's like there's no need for it. There's already businesses out there. It could be a podcast, Chris. Could be, what are we going to add that people aren't already saying? No one needs us. Yeah, that could be a limiting belief. I wanted to launch a podcast for probably a year or so before we ended up doing it. I don't think necessarily it was a limiting belief like that limiting belief that stopped it, but it could have been. And therefore, you want to put that statement on the stand, and you want to look at, well, are there any situations where that limiting belief is not true? So is it true for me? Is it true for other people? If it's not true for other people, why? Why is it not true for them? Why are they different to you? Why does that sit true for you, but it doesn't sit true for them? Yeah. And the absolute, like the kind of overriding, the strongest part of this to kind of, loosen that grip is, are you willing to stop? So are you willing to actually stop and change thinking in that way? Are you willing to accept that that could be wrong? And how determined are you to program yourself to think a different way? So how we think always informs. So it's TFAR. Everything we think transforms how we feel, and then how we feel dictates how we act, and then how we act will then lead to whatever results we get in life.
You're going to have to say that one more time a bit slowly, because that was fantastic. It was really
that happens for everyone. So it sounds a little bit like Star Wars, right? But yeah, your thoughts lead to your feelings, lead to your actions, which ultimately lead to your results. Doesn't matter. And thoughts will pop into our head, but we have the ability to be able to manage our thinking. So we can auto-suggest thoughts to ourselves. Yeah. I can set things on my phone that go off, affirmations, yeah. And I have things that will go off to let me believe that I think in a different way. And if you tell your brain to think something often enough, it will think it. So there's this element of, are you willing to stop it, right? Do you want to put a pin in how that's thinking, and what would be the thing that you want to think instead? So now we want to move to your future self. So we want to put a pin in however it is, whatever limiting belief you are thinking just now, and we want to change that, and we want to create a positive, empowering, or opposite belief of that to dictate what would that 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10, belief be. Yeah. So if you're operating at 8, 9, or 10 in whatever area you want it to be, what would be the person that's doing that? What would be a belief that would represent that? That's kind of equal and opposite to how you've been thinking up until this point. Yeah. And all that does is it gives you the autonomy to effectively program whether you want to think positively, whether you want to empower yourself about an area that you want to create significant change. And I can't get across how important this is. This is like the backbone of everything we do. As I said, nobody gets results without first having a thought. Nobody's created an iPhone. No one's got to the moon. No one's, created a great speech without first having a thought. It's never happened. You have to have a thought, which will make you feel something, which will then make you act, and then that will lead to a result. So if you can hijack that thought process, loosen the grip, and put a pin in that limiting belief, and then write how you would actually want to believe. What's a belief that you could write And instead of I'm not good enough, or I'm not educated enough, or I'm not smart enough for this, you might want to write something which is not completely pie in the sky, but it's a positive, empowering statement that might be, I am on my track, I'm on my path for success. I know everything I need to know in order to deliver what I need to for my clients or myself today. Yeah. And you can see those things can still hold true. Doesn't say you know everything. Doesn't mean you have all the money in the world, but it's an empowering statement that fills you with a can-do attitude, something that's going to keep you persistently doing something in that day, as opposed to something that's going to stop you from acting in the way that you would ideally want to.
I think that's really powerful, because obviously we all have those moments of self-doubt, where it's a lack of sleep, whether we've been drinking for some reason or another, or anything else. There's always that lack of doubt we have, where we want to either reach for a takeaway or anything else. But then if you've got these kind of affirmations or something in there that's going to help you kind of question that, or just basically roadblock that and put it up against you and say, I'm not going to be able to do this, I think that is really successful. And I heard a trick where somebody told me once that they worked in a corporate office, they had to change their password every 30 days. So every 30 days, whatever the affirmation was they're going to be learning, they put it in as a password, obviously a short and sweet password. But that was a way they kept on repeating that every day for 5 days. And then they moved it on to their banking as well. And I was like, well, you've got to be careful how much of the same password they use. But at the same time, it was a nice concept to kind of reaffirm it, because you're doing it daily and it's something you have to do. So it helps you kind of get over that piece. So, but I want you to just quickly touch on something that I've noted down here, that everything you say, it seems to be, it's all writing it down, and looking at it and assessing it and writing it down. There's nothing digital really. It's all about getting it down in paper and getting it quite, like I said, works and all, getting it all down there so you can actually see it in black and white and it's actually holding true, and then putting the positive aspect against it as well, so you can actually see it and can reference it back. I think that's very different, because in a digital age, we're used to putting stuff on, typing stuff up, but actually having a notebook or something like that, it means it's very true. You can go back to it, like journaling as well.
Yeah, it's a great point, mate. And listen, I'd love to say I've got the science to back it up, but my view on it is going back to what I was saying around how our brains have evolved. Listen, we've been chipping away on carvings of stone for thousands of years, right? And we've evolved into writing on paper and stuff. But that process hasn't actually changed too much, So, do I think that our brains, there's some, unquantifiable benefit from taking something in our brain and putting it on a stone or writing it on a bit of paper? That sort of process is more effective than typing, 100%. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to say I've got evidence to back that up, but just take that. Darren said it. That's 100% truth.
Again, keep us going in this journey of discovery. Where are we off to next?
So where we are, so we're still on. So in terms of just clarifying like your future, so you want to dictate, you want to hijack your thought process, and you want to write out now what do you want that belief to be. So if you could just score it out now that we've unpicked that and said, look, it's not necessarily true, it might not be true, and you're really strongly willing to stop it, how can you now write out a opposite belief that would be empowering and positive, that would help you take the action that you need to get you to being delivering that 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 for whatever given role that you want to succeed. Yeah. And then just to pick up on exactly what you said, get really specific on what you want to look like, you want your future to look like, and write it down. So there's a couple of ways to do this. So visualization, I love. Some people just don't get it. Journaling's another way. Ideally do both. But I would get really clear about what it is that you want your future to look like. So I do a visualization exercise with my clients where I'll take them forward into a point in time in the future and get them to describe in explicit detail what's going on around them. So you'll be able to find a guided visualization exercise online. But effectively, you want to be thinking of all the senses. So you want to physically, you want to relax yourself, you want to close your eyes, you want to physically feel like you're in the place that represents the success that you want. So you want to be an 8, 9, or 10, whatever that means to you, right? And you want to be seeing yourself there. You want to be able to picture who's around you. What date is it? Yeah, what's the time? What time of day is it? What's the weather like? Yeah. So you're seeing, you're feeling. Yeah. What can you smell? What's around you? Who's talking? What words are being said? What can you hear? Bring in as rich a picture as you possibly can into what that looks like. And the reason being is that, as coming back to what I said at the start, your limiting belief is going to be really strong here. So yes, you can loosen your grip on it, but you need to strengthen a grip on the future. And the only way that you can do that is by hijacking how you think and creating a picture of your mind of the success that you are about to create. Because your mind doesn't recognize whether it's done it, whether it's in the past or it's in the future. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to almost hijack our brains to be thinking about where is it that we want to be. And if we can't get clear about that area in our life that's going to represent success to us, well, why would we possibly think that we're going to get there? How can you get to somewhere you can't describe? How can you get to somewhere you can't see? We have to first see it. We have to first write it down before we can then see it, into reality. And coming back to all these, it's maybe because the Olympics are going on, Chris, but thinking about any of these athletes here, there's not a single gold medalist. And again, I'd love to be able to back this up, but I don't believe there's any gold medalist that would be standing on that top step of the podium that hasn't first seen themselves on the top step of that podium before they even started that race. They've first seen it in their mind, and then they've went out and achieved it in reality. And that is the exact same for whether we're, wanting to write a great report for our boss, or we want to give a great presentation at that board meeting next week, or we want to build a property portfolio for ourselves. We have to physically see ourselves in the place that we want to be, and we have to be so clear about it that it's almost like it's already happened and we are just on a path towards it.
I love that. I love the idea of the visualization to the point of every minute detail. So if you're sitting in a Chesterfield sofa, what would that feel like with the indentations and all this kind of stuff and the leather against your fingers? All these kind of minute kind of things as well. Not you're outside near a campfire and the wood's burning, you can smell those senses. I love that because that really brings it to light. And I've even seen people saying about doing your vision boards as well, putting your vision boards up there, making sure it's not just in your head, but you can actually see it on paper as well. And getting clippings and all that kind of stuff. Is that something you've done before? Is that something?
Yeah, I don't have a vision board up just now, but I'm sitting at my desk. I'm looking at. I've got our goals for the year, effectively what we're going to go and deliver. So through the coaching business and our investment business, and I've just filled my mastermind group, but this was something my coach kind of taught me to do. It's like fill the names out with the people that you want on it.
Oh, brilliant.
So I've got a mastermind group for property investing that is going to be kicking off in the next couple of weeks. And so I wrote the names that I wanted on there. Yeah, and not all of the names kind of came on necessarily that I want, but you write 15 names down. I've got 10, there that I want on. I have to go out there and make that happen. So why would I not want to create a group of individuals and work with a group of individuals that would like to? That's within my gift to go and do. So absolutely. And if I think about the back of my wardrobes, I've got different quotes. I've got some pictures up there, Disneyland. I've actually got Our Deepest Fear poem, which I can't remember we've spoken about before in another podcast, but a fantastic famous poem that talks about fear, that we're more frightened about our success. It's our light, it's about our latent potential that most frightens us, not our inability to be able to achieve them. We're actually frightened if we're more frightened about standing up and being as best as we possibly can be, because that's going to come with responsibility and people are dependent on us, and that can feel tough for a lot of people. So I've got these things that are up and I'll see them every day, so I can't get changed without at least having a split second glance towards something that's either motivational or visual that helps me basically bring into mind some success I want in the future.
I think everyone, apart from taking away the tips and tools, are starting to understand how visual a person you are as well. About your analogies.
I don't think I recognised I
so.
was quite until we've been speaking through this, where you've called it out quite a few times. But yeah.
I mean, visual storytelling helps. It's the best way to get something across as well. So,
Yeah.
where are we on this journey? Are we at?
So we're still there. We're still like, look. So how do I kind of get where I'm going? So we've kind of loosened the grip on our limiting beliefs. We've tightened the grip on where do we want to get to. So I think that's absolutely cool. Working back from there might be key milestones you want to get to. So say you've got a future state that's like 10 years away. That's really difficult actually for a lot of people to visualize. But even if it's just 6 months or a year away, what are the steps that you would need to hit in order to get to that? So once you're clear about where you're going, work back from there and set some key milestones to then start working towards. And then I guess from a goal setting point of view, you do want to be making sure your goals are smart. So are they specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely? I'm not going to get into what smart goals are. I think most people will know what they are or have come across them. And if not, just Google it on the back of this. But effectively, it's to make sure that whatever goal you set yourself towards those milestones, you're going to land in that place. So when you hit that milestone, you want to make sure that you'll know that you've hit that milestone. Yeah. So if it's like, I'm going to get a 6-pack, well, what does a 6-pack look like? It might be better to say I'm going to go to the gym, 4 days out of 7 for the next 6 months. You could check that off, no problem at all. Is it achievable? Yep. Is it realistic to you? Yeah, I'd imagine so. You might not be doing pull-ups and bench pressing 100k, but if you can go to the gym and do something there, yeah, that's absolutely realistic. And when are you going to achieve it by? So what is your milestone date? So just make sure all of those things are as smart as they can be, in the sense of not intelligent, but are they well defined?
And I guess as well, would you recommend celebrating those milestones when you do them as well, like for yourself?
I would, mate. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, it's something which I struggle with. Jill has to remind me constantly. Okay. And early on in our investment journey, it was like I used to give Jill a hard time, because I was like, she wants to celebrate everything. I was like, there'd be a bottle of champagne for when we got a refinance, when we got a deal accepted, when we got the keys for a new deal. And I was like, oh, come on, I think we've celebrated that enough. But actually, it's really nice, and I recognise that's something that Jill compliments me really well. And I need that to take stock and reflect on how far I've come. I think everyone does need that to some extent.
Yeah.
Because we're never ever the finished article. I really believe that we're always iterating and evolving and hopefully maturing and improving going forward. I think that's a lovely concept for me to think. And therefore I can be always focused, or it's easier for me to be focused on where I'm not, where I need to be, what I'm lacking, what I still have to go and achieve. But reflecting back, in the rear view mirror, just to give myself that momentary pat on the back, reflection, and say, like, well done, you're on the path to where you want to be. Great, milestone achieved, 100%. And it doesn't need to be huge either. It just needs to be something that's meaningful to you. I think, it could be going for a meal, or could be treating yourself to a Rolex watch. But it doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be so expensive or extravagant. Just make it appropriate to like how you need it to be.
Yeah, it's just recognition, isn't it, for yourself? Recognition that you've done something and you're on that path, you're on that journey to becoming who you want to be.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll mention on that, so once you've got your goal set, you know where you want to get to, you've got your milestones, you've made them smart, have a think about how your goals are aligned to your values. And I know that sounds really, really strange. This is something which a lot of people will overlook. But when you understand your values, and you're going to, because you're going to download my PDF or a similar one, then you'll recognize that the things that you're already doing in life without thinking about it are because they serve your values. So if you can hijack your goals and bring your values into that space, you've got a much better chance of achieving it. And I've got a very simple example. I've already mentioned I'm always an open book with this stuff, but belonging was a value which I recognized is really important to me. And I recognized my transition from full-time employment that I'd been in for 10 years. I'd built up what I thought was a strong network there of good people that I could rely on and lean on and depend on when necessary. They weren't going to be there. So when I moved into the working for myself in the coaching business and in the investment business, I wanted to make sure it's like, so how do I want to achieve all these goals, but how do I do it? And looking at my SMART goals, my values weren't feeding into them. Belonging wasn't feeding into that. So I thought, right, how can I get belonging into some of those goals that will help towards the outcomes that I want to achieve? So I started, this podcast is one of them. Purpose to Progress, the Facebook group, is one of them. An area that I can go and feel part of a group, but feel, belonging, a sense of belonging to. I joined a coaching mastermind group. I joined a networking group as well that I've still been on since I left. And all of these things were going to go and serve my value, and I was going to show up at them because belonging is really important to me. So I don't need to, it's not effortful for me to go and do these things because they serve that value, but are they helping me towards my goals? 100%. And I think that's just like a really, really good example of how you can almost tweak your goals to serve your values.
I think that's a really, just diving in there, actually, I think that's a really clever way of using intrinsic motivation to push you forward. I think 100%. That is a really clever way, because otherwise, if it's going to jar with you, you won't do it. But that's a really simple and easy way to move you on. I think that's a fantastic tip.
Yeah, and you can see how these things just layer on top of each other. So, if you were running goals, I never considered my values before I left full-time employment. Before I started my coaching, I never really considered that and the importance of them. So when I was writing my goals for the year, once a year, you're like writing your SMART goals for your career and like what you're going to go and achieve. It's like, you never even brought values into it. It's never even a conversation. It wasn't like, well, what are your values and how are they showing up through the goals that you're setting? It wasn't even a thought.
But it was a subset. It was a subset of the company values, I guess, were imprinted onto you, which then you have to embody, which is harder because they're not your values, I guess, as well.
You are, but I think there's probably an element of ignorance is bliss in that. The fact that, I didn't know what those values were, so it's difficult. Like, you might feel uncomfortable or you don't quite get certain things, but I don't think you really know why. I don't think it's as clear as to why that's not the case. But even if you're working in a career and you're in a company with their own set of values, you should have your own set of values and your goals. If you want to be successful in that particular area and that particular role, the goals that you set for yourself, they should be values. They should be led by your own values. So for example, fun might be a value to you. Well, how, regardless of what you're trying to achieve, how can you make it fun? Yeah. And if you were able to make those goals fun, you'll smash them out of the park. You're more likely to achieve great success at them if you can align them with your values. But it's weird. I had to leave work to realize, oh man, I could have done such a better job with my goals and my team's goals if I'd sat down and got the time to go through their values and worked through how I could bring those values out into the goals that they want to achieve.
I'm laughing because one of my values is fun. And that's why when you touched upon that, it's have fun in what I do. So that's why I joined the Rum startup, because I wanted to have fun and combine that with work as well and just experiment and have a little bit of craziness as well. So I laugh at that as well. And it's funny to reflect as well. You're talking about your company and your team and how you could have added that more value. And retrospectively, you look at it and you say, Jesus, that has made such a difference to those individuals' lives. I'm sure you made a massive difference already, but the extra value to kind of giving them from what you've done now would have been phenomenal, because you're obviously doing that just now with your current group as well.
Yeah, no, I like it 100%. I think it's ultimately it's on us. So there's a big responsibility on anyone, I guess, listening to this, like go and try it. Like I'd imagine most people haven't set goals for themselves in their workplace and thought, how can they bring their values in to help them achieve them and make them, more enjoyable and fulfilling. Like you'll achieve so much more success. I honestly, that is transformational. Aligning them to your values is such an important component. So yeah, that's the last point, I guess, in terms of like understanding where do you want to go. Like that's a kind of key element. Kind of bringing us into the last section. Like, so okay, so I know who I am. I understand myself well. I know where I want to get to. How do I go and actually start getting there? So we've touched on it a bit because it kind of goal setting moves into the how can I get there. So we've looked at both the what and the how, but I would say there's probably kind of 4 key things. Yeah, and I'm going to the last one I'm going to touch on is one that you've already spoken about. But get around people who want to grow and achieve more in their life. I would say the number one thing that I've had to push myself to is put myself in environments where there are people doing the things that I want to do. I just like not even, it's like a binary decision. Well, it's not even binary. I just do it. I don't need to think too much about it. I know that's always going to help me. So I joined a mastermind when I left my work. I got around a property, I paid to get educated in property investment and got around a strong network that were people out there buying deals with, using private finance, buying one or two buy-to-let deals, or one deal a month or one a month, normalizing the behavior that I wanted to achieve. So get around people that, want to grow and achieve more, but specifically in the area of direction of growth that you want to change in. I also talk about the second one is identify and reinforce positive daily habits. So I talk about PDHs, positive daily habits. They're things that you're going to do in day out that are going to support you towards where you want to get to. So how do you identify them? They're almost like a microcosm of your goals. So if you think to what we were talking about earlier around your milestones, keep breaking that down into, well, what would I do every day that would end up serving that? So property always springs to mind for me, but it could be, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on Rightmove every day. I'm not saying that's a particularly great habit, by the way, but or to have, but I'm saying as an example, that could be something you could do every day. Recently, I wanted to improve my upper body strength, and I always struggled with press ups. I always struggled with like wrists when I do strength work at the gym. My wrists and my forearms would be the bit that struggles. So I'm really struggling to work the chest or the shoulders. So I was like, right, okay, how can I do that? How can I change that? So every day I was doing a push-up challenge. Yeah, so it's a daily habit that was helping me towards my fitness goals. So just have a think about how you can break down your milestones into some daily habits that might help you get where you need to. It might even be something like reading 10 pages of a book or getting up early and walking the dog every day. Yeah, it can be something so simple. Going for a 5-minute walk in the morning as soon as you get up. Soak that vitamin D up, or what we've got left of it in Scotland. And, that will set you up in terms of the right frame of mind to go and win the day and go and achieve your goals. It doesn't need to be, too complex. It can be so simple, this stuff. So yeah, that would be the second one. The third one is just, as well as the milestones, where are the checkpoints along route to those milestones? So obviously, ideally daily, go and check what you were going to do and have you done it and what are you going to do tomorrow. But I would say as a minimum, every week, just sit down and soak up that week. What did you do well? What didn't go so well? What have you learned? And what are you going to do differently? Every single week. And if you can do that at least every single week, you're not going to go far wrong. I always think about this analogy. Chris, you're going to take the piss here because it's another visual metaphor. But imagine someone at a captain of a ship, and you've got this wheel in front of you. Now, if you set your goals and you've got your milestones in front of you, you imagine this like steering wheel. Now you need to go and power the engine at some point as well. You need to get off your backside and go and do some stuff. So you can't be steering and strategizing all the time. So you leave the wheel and you go and start doing stuff, and you're shoveling, like coal into the fire, and the ship's going in the right direction that it's needing to go, and you're like, fantastic. But if you're in there too long and your head's down and you're working, who's steering the ship? Who's making sure it's still going in the direction you need it to? So you need to come back. You need to steer it and nudge it a little bit, because it'll have gone slightly off course, and you need to go back again. Yeah, and start doing some more stuff. Now, if you're in there for 3-4 months, 5 months, and you haven't lifted your head to see where you're going, you might be doing lots. You might be busy and filling your week, but are you where you need to be? Are you going in the direction that you want to be? So I think it's really important to get that balance between checking in, but not spending all your time just strategizing. And likewise, don't spend all your time in the boiler room, in the engine room, kind of doing the do. You need to get that balance. And I would say just checking in each week. You won't go far wrong. You can do this and sort of stuff for like 10, 15 minutes. What went well? What didn't? What did you learn? What are you doing differently? Done. Yeah. 10, 15 minutes, and you've just steered that ship into the direction that you want to.
Fantastic. No, I love that. I love that. Was there a fourth point?
There's a fourth one. I was going to let you bring it home. What do you think it is?
Was it fun?
It's fun. Have fun. Just like, even if fun's not one of your kind of key driving values, it's not for me. But everyone likes a bit of fun. Like, there's so much, like, if anything, like, as well, we talk about COVID and like the difficulties people have had over the last like wee while. It's like, I think we're all kind of social creatures inherently. Yeah. Some are more so, whether you're an introvert, extrovert. Get out, interact, engage, hold yourself lightly. Don't take yourself too seriously. Know that, nothing's a complete failure. Nothing's a complete success. You'll never be the finished article, but equally, you are as equally valuable as every single human being on this planet. Yeah. And if you hold those two things like simultaneously, everything else in the middle, go and enjoy it. Go on and like have fun, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Honestly, love that one, because what I'd build up on that is you never know what opportunity is going to come up as well and what you do. I think that is beautiful as well. The fact that these fun elements from a personal experience have brought me so much opportunity that I've been very surprised, and you never know what's going to be around the corner. So have fun with it, enjoy it. And by the sounds of it, if you go and download Darren's values and work through that, and even, I know you do these free calls on a Friday. Don't know if you want to tell listeners.
Yeah, listen, I talk about it I talk about it a lot, and it's a difficult one. I'm massively blessed. I come from a standpoint of being hugely grateful for what I have on the way to everything that I want. So when I left corporate career, I get it. I was at Blair Drummond all day yesterday with the kids. Could I have done that in my corporate job? Probably not. We'd both have to request holidays, and someone was off. You couldn't guarantee it, but it was like, yeah, guys have booked in, some shifts are changed. Do you fancy coming? Yeah, booked it, done it. And what a fantastic day. I've got the flexibility to enjoy that with my kids. They're not even started school yet, which is phenomenal. And I love that. But I always schedule in, ever since I left work or employment, I was like, I'm putting in half a day just for free coaching sessions, for chats, to say hi, for networking. Because as I say, even if someone's needing help with a problem or whatever, but can't afford coaching, or someone just wants to reach out and understand me or what I do a little bit better, there. So every single Friday, doesn't matter what's on, I'll have that set aside in my day to kind of just have freely available calls with anyone. So yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes. Free call Fridays. Feel free to drop in a session and say hi.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be good for everyone who's listening. Download their values, have a look at it, have a chat with Darren, and see how he could potentially help you as well. But yeah, Darren, thank you very much for your time. That's fantastic. I mean, so much to unpick there as well. We'll put a lot of stuff in the show notes as well, links to the PDFs, links to your website. And yeah, thank you very much, and have a great day.
You're treating me like a guest now, Chris. I'd have been on here regardless, right? So
no worries. Cheers, Darren. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode. But until then, stay on purpose, and we'll see you next week.